Tonight, we take another deep dive into remote viewing. I have a new friend on the show, new to the podcast, but he's a member of the FFG family, Brian Boodhoo. Brian, it's great to have you on the podcast, my friend. How are you tonight?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Good to be on here. Be on
Yeah,
here.
man. I've been wanting to get you on for a while. We connected. You and I officially connected, I guess, probably a few months back now when I jumped back into the host seat with the FFG team, and I got to see some of your work and the deep dives you like to take in your remote viewing journeys as you're pulling things out. You've done quite a few sessions now. You're with the what do you guys call yourself? The Blue Team? You guys change your name? Is this a thing I'm hearing?
Yeah, on a rolling basis, they change it to whatever blue team or blue sky team, whatever creativity comes or our week, we go with that.
Just go with a different team name for you guys. But
Yeah,
you guys have had some pretty awesome targets lately that have been coming out.
yeah, we're getting the good targets. We're getting the mysteries slash woo and historical too. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna talk about everything under the sun that we can get to tonight in our time together. But I'd like to get a little bit of background too on you. I know you're a military vet. What branch were you in?
I was in the Marine Corps. Yeah.
Oh, Semper
There's
Fi.
stuff in
Okay.
there though. Yeah. There's stuff
Not
in
all
there.
not all crayons, right? Not all
Yeah,
the
not all
crayons.
jars. Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you do in the Marines?
I was an anti-tank homicidman, so I was an infantryman.
Okay.
Didn't do much tank killing. Just a lot of Ivans. The little targets. We shoot a lot of those.
Okay.
But yeah, that was I spent about 5 years, and I got medically separated, and that opened up a lot of avenues for me to explore remote viewing, actually.
Yeah, well that was my next question. How'd you go from, Marine Corps infantry to remote viewing?
Well, I got very interested in meditation while I was in,
Uh-huh.
and a part of my journey there, on my first deployment, I would meditate. I would sleep down on the ground, and I started having a lot of sleep paralysis because of meditation.
Mm, yeah.
And that opened me up a little bit, and I think I might have went through something where my eyes were closed and I saw a flash of light and my body kind of felt like it got shocked. And that started these episodes of sleep paralysis. And so that got
Hmm.
me kind of interested. First of all, I want to get away from the sleep paralysis. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
And but I started seeing over time, I started playing more and more with this meditation thing, and I would see these little spirals of like blue, indigo, and dark gray. And I was always that intrigued me, so I played around with that a lot.
To backpedal a minute, where were you on your first deployment? Where were you sent?
We went on alert, and we were in alert on in Sicily,
Okay.
and so we didn't really do anything on alert besides train. So we started training in different countries, and I went to Bulgaria, and
Hmm.
that's where weird stuff with meditation started happening. And yeah.
What kind of meditations were you doing?
So my meditation is super lazy. It's
I
the
like
best.
that.
Yeah. I lay down and I cover my eyes
Hmm.
with some sort of cloth so I don't see any light. And I try to stay awake as long as I can while being super relaxed. And I've been doing it on and off since like middle school. I'd come home from middle school super tired and I would lay down and I don't know what happened, but I would kind of hear stuff around. I was still awake somehow, but I
Hmm.
didn't know I was asleep until much later on.
Yeah. That's what the Monroe Institute, I think, is moving to like Focus 10 or one of their stages. They call it like mind awake, body asleep. That's what it sounds like you're going through. And and it's that in between state where that sleep paralysis kicks in, right?
Yeah, well, I figured out over time that the sleep paralysis stuff came as a result for me like having too much energy in my head, especially before bedtime. And over time, I've learned to control it where it doesn't happen anymore. I if I feel it coming on where I'd feel okay, I can't tell if I'm awake or asleep. That's
Right.
when I know, okay, it's I'm probably gonna fall into paralysis. And so I just move the energy, kind of ground it a little bit.
What is that? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. What does that feel like as you're moving the energy out of your head?
It, it like getting the chills.
Okay, yeah, like pulsing
Yeah.
up and down, like from the.
Uh, and just like I imagine like I'm like Groot, I imagine
Uh-huh.
growing roots out of my feet and
Yeah.
just going into the ground. And it's just an imagination technique, but it moves stuff down your body.
But well, in that, the astral, we're talking the astral level stuff now too, right? When you think
Yeah,
about it, it tends to happen in those states. And you're creating tools, a tool set, psychic tool sets that help you to move energy and visualize those things. I do often feel chills or sometimes even pulsing that runs down. Now, when you're in if paralysis hits you, are you one that has like, oh man, there's something in the room here with me? Like, do you go through that part of the experience or?
I had one really bad experience with it, and I didn't sleep in that room for a week. You know, I
Right.
it's so weird because it paralysis recreates reality in a way so
Yeah.
that you think it's real. But when I was in there, I saw something and I something got next to me and the bed
Mm.
made a noise and I freaked out. Like if the
Yeah.
bed made a noise like somebody took a knee on the bed,
Hmm.
then and I ended up sleep in that room for a bit. But ever since then, my paralysis has been kind of not as intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found this was my childhood and my 20s, especially when I really started exploring this. I would get stuck in paralysis and things would show up and I was really scared. And I found once you decide I'm not going to be afraid of this anymore, the experience kind of changes because then you can, it sounds like, develop techniques to move past that stage.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? You said you were looking at the some that, early stages you'll see like purple swirls or gray swirls. So what are you doing with that energy?
Uh, I'm just trying to get to the point where I see it again.
Mm,
I don't necessarily think of it as energy, but I want to get it
right.
up to that point where, okay, I can see that. And to me, that was more interesting just because it's not something people talk about.
Yeah.
And to me, it was real. It was definitely an effect. Um, and there's been points where I can hear myself snoring, but
Hmm.
like it's just like, what do you do with that? And I didn't think
Yeah.
it had any value until I get into remote viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're in that state and you're recognizing that my body's asleep. I can hear, but my senses are still alert,
yeah,
right? I
yeah.
had
And
I
you
had
get
an ex
visions.
Yeah, you can start to visualize things. I know I had one of those experiences and I was laying on my couch. I'm watching TV. I close my eyes. I can hear the TV show going on, and then I heard singing, like non-human singing coming up from behind me. And this thing had a wand and it touched me on the head and electrocuted me. And it was awful, dude. It was
Yeah.
awful. That was
Why
years
the
ago.
electrocution though? Isn't that weird? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
What was that?
yeah,
I put it in one of my earlier books talking about that specific experience.
yeah.
You've had something similar with the electrocution?
Yeah, the that night I told you about when there's something that took a knee next to my head.
Yeah.
That was my last Reiki course that I took when I became a Reiki master. Master of nothing, but um
I feel the same way. Yeah.
yeah,
I say I'm a
yeah,
teacher.
yeah. And my teacher, I was kind of asleep and my teacher came in like a Casper or Friendly Ghost type of way and touched the back of my head, said,
Yeah.
"Let me show you the secrets of the universe." Touched the back of my head and my body felt like it got shocked.
Yeah.
And that's when the paralysis started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So he opened you up or he helped you to open up in that moment.
Yeah, I think it's probably something more intrinsic to like human biology. People would talk about Kundalini experiences
Hmm.
and all that, where, it forces you to seek a different path afterwards. But to me, I felt like I've had a couple of those in my life, and it's always been at a time that's a little weird.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Like a weird
Like
time?
at a time that I was going through some stuff.
I think that high stress can sometimes pull us into these, it opens us up to those other things that might be out there. It
Yeah,
forces us to see things that we don't normally pay attention to. And I think this is where dogma can get in the way sometimes, right? Because, if you're going through high stress, you experience something scary and you're like, oh, you're going through a bad thing. You're drawing in evil and dark energy. Maybe. I mean, I don't know, but you may also just be seeing reflections of what you're projecting out there coming back at you at the same time as well. I think it's all true depending on what level of, psychic education you're at, how you're going to interpret it.
yeah. So my question for you then, you
Hmm.
mentioned that you you're a Reiki master as well, and that sometimes you'd feel the paralysis come to you. And in Reiki, there's the idea that you can go back in time and heal yourself.
Hmm.
My question to you, in those times that you went back, was it those times you're in paralysis, technically?
Wow, I never thought of that. Um, I don't go back. I haven't gone back yet to those points in time, but I'm still not convinced that it's not me.
Yeah,
There's certain things I'm not just not putting out publicly yet, just because I'm depending on what I'm going to do with that information. So I have thought about like maybe some of these experiences were me at some point in time, but I haven't yet reached my point in this current timeline where I've said, "Oh, that was me." So I haven't reached it yet, but I do suspect it's a possibility. But I never thought of it in the context that you just mentioned it.
yeah. I realized when I had a lot of those paralysis experiences, again, like I mentioned, it was a rough time in my life. And obviously in Reiki, you go back and that was, you go back to a time where you want to heal yourself, give yourself a little love here and there. And and I kind of realized after a while of doing that that holy crap, it might have been me that was because I felt there was something in the room and I didn't want to fall asleep because I felt
Wow.
there's a presence there.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
that's gonna give me a lot to think about, I think now.
yeah,
I know that there was a specific point in time that I do give energy to, but I was awake. I was awake. I was going through something, so I know that that's a big energetic moment that to this day I still send energy back to that point in time in my life. And now hang on one second. Sorry, I had this frog in my throat and it was just getting progressively worse. Um, like I've created these loops through remote viewing where and I'm not experiencing the paralysis, but I am, connecting with myself. Sometimes it's a month out, sometimes it's years out, and I'm just creating these loops where I'm giving myself information and feedback, and it's been a really neat experience seeing, what I'm perceiving at both ends of those loops. That's been a neat experience. But with the Reiki, I'll have to pay attention to the paralysis because I haven't had paralysis in a very long time too. Really, since I've started remote viewing. And I wonder
yeah,
if that's just because I've shifted my techniques. I don't know. It's a lot to think about.
yeah. And during those time in your paralysis, was it like and you don't have to answer, but
It's fun.
just to think about it, like, was it there's something going on in your personal life that was a little bit troubling that
My
might have,
paralysis, yeah, might have called me in, right? No, this was all throughout my childhood. Um, yeah, just at night, I'd be trying to fall asleep. Um, and I was just so scared of the dark. I was scared of my mom when I was like a young teenager had Whitley Strieber's book, so that sat on the bookcase for a long time, and like she would talk openly about it, so that just terrified me. And I think we did have some strange encounters with some kind of entities in the house too, but then I would have these paralysis moments. But I don't know because they've shifted over time and some of them I've come to recognize because I journal about everything. I realized, oh, this was opening me up to prepare me for this next experience. So maybe it was me at different points in time. I'm going to think a lot on that one for
Yeah.
sure. I just listened to the Y Files. You ever listen to the Y Files? I forget the guy's name.
Uh, I know you talk. I know Hecklefish. I know. I'll never
Yeah,
forget
he's
the
got
guy.
Hecklefish. He
Big
just put one
fan.
out, and it was like he was evaluating the grays are us in the future, but it was all about like completing time loops, and it was really there was a lot of it that's relevant to some of the explorations that I've been doing on my own time as a remote viewer.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So let me bring us back here. You're going through this, learning to meditate really, which is just relaxing yourself, which takes a heck of a lot of discipline. You must have a very calm mind at times because there's no way I could just lay there because my mind's just it never shuts off, dude. It just never
Yeah.
stops. So props to you for being able to get to that state from laying there. Um, how do you end up saying, "Hey, I'm having these experiences. I'm going to learn remote viewing now." How'd you get there?
Well, I didn't really connect the two with my experiences in remote viewing, but I got interested in remote viewing because I saw some work from Daz and Dick,
Hmm.
and this is their foresight stuff on the
Right, I remember.
pyramids. And that I knew intrinsically there's something there that's real. These guys aren't faking. They're putting their time, they're putting in work.
Yeah.
And so that got me really interested. So I kept delving into it. And when I found out, I tried it for myself through TRV. Um,
Hmm.
and that started my journey with it. And I had basic target contact here and there, but it wasn't anything too extensive. So I kept playing at it, and I would just do like quick 5 minute sessions
Hmm.
because I felt that if you're able to kind of recognize when you're on target, then it carries itself out through the rest of the session. So I didn't need to do a 30-minute session to just see the feedback. I wanted to
Yeah.
do that 5 minutes. And then over time I built the discipline to where I'd go for a lot longer. But
Yeah. That's similar to what Edward says in my conversations with him. He does the ideogram and he says he knows in the beginning it's a certain feeling that he's looking for to show that he says, to show that a remote viewing is taking place. And he says, if I can't get that feeling, then I stop the session and I come back later. It sounds like you're describing something similar.
yeah. And I think over time in your session you just naturally somewhat get onto target. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
it's learning to recognize hey, I'm going off into my imagination here, or like you just know when you get into that state of flow, it's
Yeah.
just such a neat feeling where you're not even thinking about it. You just got the information coming and you're just trying to get it down as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you ended up getting HRVG training. Is that correct?
Yeah. So after about a year of doing all of that, I would journal a lot and then
Hmm.
I'd do remote viewing. And I did that for a year straight. And I'd go for long drives. And while you're driving, that's when all the brilliant ideas come to you. So I'd
Right.
go back and write it
Right.
down. And after a while, I was like, okay, there's got to be more to this. And this is on the human level now. Like, okay, humanity's gonna change. I need to do something to kind of to meet them halfway. So I got into farming. I was like, okay, if all this stuff is gonna go bad, I want to learn how to farm.
Yeah.
And so that was my next thing. I went to this farm in South Carolina for 13 months.
Hmm.
And during my time there, HRVG course was offered, and I took it. Uh, I was part of that first class with CETA. So yeah, and
Wow.
HRVG, yeah.
I think, what's interesting is you said humanity is going to change. I want to come back to that point. Like, where were you getting that impression from that humanity is going to change?
So when I got out of the Marine Corps in 2019, I started with, looking into a lot of the Edgar Cayce stuff.
Mm,
And then I would kind of corroborate some of the stuff that you guys were talking about in your remote viewing sessions. And when I saw that match, I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this Edgar Cayce guy. And
yeah.
And then over time, I just kept seeing more and more and more people talking about the same thing, that we're going to change. And I believe it because now we're outgrowing this system, it seems like. Like
Hmm.
we've become too smart and we've become a little more intuitive as well, and
Hmm.
which leads to crazy people.
It can,
Yeah,
yeah,
it can.
who aren't grounded in understanding.
Yeah.
And I think
So
that's where, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, no, you're good. I
I
was
just,
gonna
I
say,
think that's where dogma, I think keeps people contained, right? Maybe people who aren't ready to handle the extremes of some of this information that comes our way. Because that there's so much there's so much freedom, I think, but also a great responsibility with that information. Just your mental health can take such a dive if you're not ready to
yeah,
process some of the things that you learn when you step. Like I remember when I stepped out of religion, I was like 19, 20 years old, and I was like, wow. Like when I literally stepped out of it and wasn't afraid anymore. Because I was like, I need to find a religion. I need to find a path. I'm looking at Buddhism and all these different things, because I was raised Catholic, and I'd finally gotten over like it's not a sin. I'm not going to hell. And then it's like, now what? Like now I'm
yeah,
out here floating around on my own. I need to figure this out. And it can be you can go in some dark places.
yeah. And I think at a base level, for most part, a lot of people on this journey kind of rediscover themselves and they gain their own sovereign mind in a way. And I think those are the
Yeah.
ones that stay because there's so much information out there, like you mentioned, that you have to learn
Yeah.
how to think for yourself and
Yeah.
experience things for yourself.
It's hard, especially right now, because of all the noise that's being thrown at us. And Elon Musk talks about it. With he's looking at with Neuralink and AI, and he's talking about how he's worked it out to how many bytes in a day our minds can put out and receive. I don't know what the number is, but then he started talking about something. He says, but when you merge with AI, which I'm not advocating for, but he says with something like Neuralink, you can deal with what's called conceptual telepathy. And that I understand. When you're remote viewing, there are times like I'll look at my ideogram and I've got the whole story. Like I've got the whole thing, but now I have to translate it in a format that, physical reality can understand. I got to put it in the 5 sense data, and that's what takes the time to write it down. But if I didn't have to translate it, I've got the whole concept here, right? And then we have to go through that process of unpacking it. And I think that's part of this, this journey. I remember when I was younger, I would get these downloads, and it would take weeks, months, years to just understand these concepts for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of unpacking, especially in remote viewing too, that you might have an image in your head, but when you try to sketch it out, it's like, yeah, that's not what I was thinking. It's so
That's not my
ugly.
strong suit. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so where do you see humanity going? I mean, you've got this, the meditations involved in remote viewing. You've got these great experiences now. I mean, where do you see us going?
I think we're getting a little smarter. We're getting a little more in tune. So there's definitely an aspect of humanity that's going to choose the route of natural evolution, and I think you're on that path, and I'm on that path. A lot of us remote viewers are on that path.
Right.
Um, so that's going to evolve. And then there's the other side of it where, people are going to try to do the AI stuff and live in that lifestyle. I think that will evolve as well. But
Yeah.
I trust, there's so many in your personal life, in my personal life, there's so many situations in your life that you're put in, and at the time it didn't make sense.
Hmm.
But on the grand scheme of things, like it all makes sense when you look back at it.
Right.
And that gives me like faith a little bit, like
Hmm.
it's gonna work out somehow, some way that I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
on some shitty path.
I think that's wisdom, because you start to see things, you start to see the larger patterns as time goes on. My journey has taken me in so many different directions, and you just reach a point where you're like, this is going to serve me in ways that I have no idea how it's going to help me. Never in a million years would I thought I'd be sitting helping a young child work through like suicidal ideations when I was sitting in counterterrorism interrogation training when I was like 22 years old, thinking I'm gonna catch terrorists, and now I'm like
Yeah.
working with little kids who are crying, and it's served me. So you never know how these little things we acquire over our lifetime are gonna help us on this journey.
Yeah. And, it gives me hope and wonder. But as far as humanity goes, I do think there's going to be that little split that everybody talks about.
Yeah, I agree. I think we are moving towards what is it, a divergence point. Also a convergence. I think there's a lot coming together right now, and I do think there's these splits that are coming to our species. But it ties into like the religious texts of like the rapture, right? Or the law of one stuff with the harvest, or like Dolores Cannon's work talking about some people are going to go to the new earth and it's a new frequency, and it's easy to get dogmatic about it. But right now we can look at it and say, no, the world is changing. Mindsets are changing. There are influences. It looks like we are moving towards a clear split. And I am trying to stay on the side of intuition over technology, but also working closely with technology to help me get there.
Yeah, have a healthy relationship with it, I think is
I think
important.
that's I think that's
Yeah.
important for sure.
As far
So let's
as,
talk. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say as far as the New Earth stuff, like I don't know how much I believe in it, but
Yeah.
there is that moving towards it that seems to be a thing. But we'll see. We'll see.
I agree. I'm not saying I'm a believer. I think that
Yeah.
there's some big claims that are made, and I really enjoyed Dolores Cannon's work from the aspect of, especially at that point in my journey, man, it opened my mind to new concepts. And there's something that's so exciting about it. Whether it's true or not, it served the purpose of allowing me to think about things I never would have thought about before. And then you've had other people like who was it David Wilcock and Corey Good with the secret space force and the blue avians, which I don't prescribe to any of that. But again, they told a fantastic story that made you think about things. Like what if I go to sleep and then go fight a war on another planet for 50 years and then get sent back? And like, that's a fascinating concept to think about, you
Yeah.
know? But again, sometimes people just tell stories, but I think they're repeating an old theme that is
Yeah.
somewhere encoded within us. What's that going to look like? I don't know.
Yeah. And I suspect it's probably more relating to this grander timepiece, this much bigger timepiece of planets and alignments and all that, the precession of the equinox
Hmm.
changes the stuff we believe in or the way we conduct society.
How does that leave you with a sense of like I'm not in control of my life sometimes?
A little bit, a
Yeah,
little bit. Uh,
yeah.
yeah. But then you go back to the things you do in your everyday life. Oh yeah, I'm driving this car. I'm in control of my life. So there's the illusion that you control it, but
Right.
yeah.
Does that bother you? I wrestle with this a lot. Like, am I in control? Am I not in control? And is that okay?
If I can get something out of it,
Hmm.
then it doesn't bother me too much. If I don't have some sort of purpose, then it'll probably bother me.
I think that's it,
Yeah.
your purpose. But what if your purpose sucks? And I don't think that it does, but like, and I think that's my anxiety that kicks in. Like, what if my purpose sucks? And then, but I also think we can take meaning. I mean, sometimes I think it's up to us to derive meaning from the experience, which is
Yeah.
important. Even the
Yeah.
worst experiences, I think we can learn some pretty grand lessons from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now to throw into the mix, with the blue team or whatever you guys are calling yourself this week, you guys are getting some pretty deep esoteric and mystery targets and some historical targets. And I saw you guys just recently looked at, and I haven't had a chance to watch this session yet. The 3 days of darkness. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I remember my grandmother talking about this when I was a kid and forgot about it until I saw the thumbnail. I was like, oh man, one of the reasons I probably had nightmares and sleep paralysis because my grandma was telling me about these 3 days of darkness. Can you talk a little bit about this project?
Yeah, it was so there's a idea and it kind of spawned from this guy, Alan Moss Ermeyer. I don't know how to say his name. And
I'll take your word for
this
it.
there's been other people that have mentioned this 3 days of darkness prophecy, and it hasn't just been him. Um, but there's an idea that we're gonna go through a turbulent time in which like you can't really go outside or hang outside
Mm,
because you're gonna die. Um, and so in this particular prophecy, I'm not too well versed on it, but in the session work, we saw like stuff coming down from the sky that might have been a little more chemical. Um,
mm.
and my personal session, I was just seeing Erlenmeyer. I wasn't really seeing too much of the the prophecy side. I did see
Well,
that he was a seer.
okay, you're seeing him, the prophet himself. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Hmm.
yeah. Um, but then the division of effort kind of revealed a little bit more about the potentials that as to what it can be. Um, and it just might be some war related stuff that causes this 3 days of darkness.
Do
But
you
there's
think
been
it's
other.
worldwide based on the data?
I don't I don't think so. I don't really put too much stock in it.
Yeah.
Um, there's been other people that have talked about the 3 days of darkness, and I've read a book. You're probably familiar with it, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life.
Maybe it's been a while, but yeah, it does ring
Yeah,
a bell.
they talk about the 3 days of darkness and that
Mm,
being some sort of dimensional shift, which,
mm.
I don't know if I believe that either, but there is
Right.
something to this 3 days of darkness, but I don't know how widespread it is or how involved it is in everybody's life.
Right. Right. And well, that's the
Yeah.
thing about remote viewing, right? When you're looking at it, and it could be the same for the seer. You look at something that's like bad or catastrophic, and it can seem world ending because you're right there at ground zero. So what you're describing, like everyone's dead or this is awful. But if you can pull back, you realize, oh no, this is localized. But you don't always think to give that perspective when you're in a session because you're not in your normal conscious state of mind sometimes. But I think that's an important point to point out. He might have been just looking at a localized area where it's going to be dark for 3 days, you know?
Yeah. And there is something to be said about multiple people coming back with something. Like it might be something in our event stream that's probably going to happen,
Hmm.
that hasn't manifested yet, and multiple people are picking up on it. Multiple.
Now, this is throughout history, or is this recently now that we're getting
Like
more?
it's it's the mechanism behind like a lot of the predictive linguistic stuff.
Mm,
If I ask you to write a book about the year 2050, you're probably going to come back with actual stuff from 2050.
right.
Just because you're positing yourself, oh, what would it be like if I was in 2050? And then
Hmm.
you're in some sort of open search, and then this information just slams your brain. Like, how much of what we
Agreed.
think is actually yours?
I wrestle with that a lot. Like when I write a book, I often feel like, and I'm not a channeler, but it's very I've talked to other remote viewers about this who write. It's the same feeling as being in a state of flow. When I'm writing the book. I mean, there's been times where like I'm editing it and something has happened and I've lost a paragraph and I can recreate it word for word, or I think I lost a paragraph, but it's actually got moved like two paragraphs down, and then I'll rewrite it and I look down I'm like, oh man, I was able to re-extract that same exact paragraph, and having not looked at it for weeks or months, not remembering it. So I do think that we are able to tap into whatever our focus is. And when you're taking your time to write a very long book, I think you're going to have elements that are absolutely going to ring true. Much like The Simpsons, I think those guys are just tapped in intuitively to society.
Yeah. Aside from the 33rd degree Mason stuff, I think it's probably more the case that they're tapped in, very tapped
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, they're tied into current events and because they're making commentary on what's the state of the world, right? And so I think it's I think it's just a natural phenomenon that they happen to just put these predictive moments in there. But
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe they know more.
Yeah. Just maybe.
The Simpsons of all things to be predicting our futures, after all the work that we do with remote viewing. So you looked at this 3 days of darkness. It's interesting though. You talked about multiple people, looking at this stuff and getting this 3 days of darkness data point. Something we saw a similar phenomena with Three Eye Atlas. And I think it's fascinating that multiple people, and maybe not, it's only the third interstellar object that's ever come through our solar system. So I guess it would be a natural target for psychics and seers and remote viewers. But so many people looked at it. Many teams looked at it blindly. At least that's what they're alleging. And yet they're all bringing back anomalous data. Any thoughts on that?
Anomalous in what sense do you mean?
Suggesting that this is more than just a rock flying through, that there's some kind of intelligence behind it.
Um, well, I think it's a big thing that's being talked about now, and you had a piece on this where there was some bleed over from a session that I personally did for a different team.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first target I did with the new team, and I had rapport with the old team, and so I was probably in that close
Ah,
local loop with
interesting.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're thinking, and for people who aren't too familiar with remote viewing, I mean, when you start working with a team, Brian mentioned earlier the division of effort. Everybody, there'll be overlap, but then everybody gets a different aspect of the story. And really ties into things I think about a lot. It's like the hive mind, this shared consciousness that you're coming into this field where everybody's working together, but there's no communication in five sense reality. There's no communication of like, all right, I'll look at this part, I'll look at this part. You don't realize it until you see the feedback. So you suspect that makes sense that you were still tapped into the other team as you were
Yeah.
transitioning to the new team. Because in this session he's talking about it was the Optimus robot by Tesla. They were looking at the rollout of it. It was a great project by the blue team, and he had this one scene where he was looking up in the sky and there was just this thing going on up in the sky, some kind of nebulous event or celestial event. And it coincided very, at the same time where we were looking at Three Eye Atlas and all this data was coming back. But then Naeem and I also had robots in our sessions, which was weird, which I
Yeah.
don't understand where that came from. So I was wondering maybe something's going to happen with Three Eye Atlas at the same time that Tesla's rolling his robots out, and it's just natural bleed over. I don't know.
Or, there might have been some bleed over from target tiering aspect of it as well.
That's possible too.
Yeah.
It's such
Yeah.
it's such a sensitive discipline, every aspect of it, and it's easy to, like you said with the targeteering, if somebody created the Three Eye Atlas target and then went to the Optimus target and wasn't completely clear of the one target when they did the next one, yeah, it's possible that it bled through.
Yeah. Maybe. And I think that was the first time operating as a dual team anyway, so it
Yeah.
comes around. Yeah.
That makes sense. So given the complexities of remote viewing, like how do you stay grounded? How, because you have access to this information, it's easy to look at something like that and say, "That's it. The aliens are coming. Here we go." Like we dance on that edge all the time. How do you stay grounded in reality?
I think before becoming a remote viewer and tackling, well, before tackling these fantastical targets, I think it's important to gain your grounding in
Mm,
validation targets.
yeah.
Because at least you're able to say, okay, this is this and this is what I didn't get. And you're able to like help your subconscious grow a little bit.
Hmm.
And over time, after doing that for a bit, and you approach a fantastical target now, then you're able to approach it with a little more grounded not mind. Because as soon as you have cognizance of, okay, this is a UFO, all the stuff that you believe about UFOs kind of
Is going to come through.
it just spills out on paper.
Right. And that's
So
and I agree. And that's why what you were saying was get grounded in verifiable targets, and that should be your backbone there. Going back to because anybody can do enigmatic targets and say, oh look, I saw the aliens, but there's no feedback for that, so you're not closing that loop with your consciousness to calibrate your mind in terms
yeah,
of what's signal line and what's your imagination.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
But apart from, the training, I I just kind of disconnect personally
Hmm.
after and
Yeah.
just move. And when I'm in session, I'm kind of groggy, and I would prefer to be groggy so I don't judge the data too much.
Yeah.
I speed myself up to where my mind is processing information at a higher rate than I normally would, but then I slow my bodily noise down to where I'm kind of sleepy. So I'm working at two
Mm.
different aspects here. And I think that helps a lot because I just put whatever comes to my mind personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And everybody has their own methods, their own cooldowns, their own ways to approach, a system. Like I prefer to do mine. I'll get up early, so I'll get up at like 4:45 in the morning, and then just sit right down and do a session. I'll meditate for like 10 minutes and then just jump right into a session because I don't have the day running through me yet.
Yeah.
And if I do it at the end of the day, I usually fall asleep.
Oh
Two
yeah.
pages in, I end up like just passed out. And it's like, well, that didn't work. I got to try again in the morning. So everybody has their own system. But I think it's important to have, techniques to stay grounded. And like, let's say you get information that's crazy. Like, let's just do world event stuff. How do you process that? You get world events that like, oh, a bomb's going to go off somewhere or a building's going to come down or a 9/11 style event. I mean, how do you process that and then go out about your day?
Yeah, the world event stuff, I haven't done many of them, just the
Hmm.
ones that you've seen. And I did have more residual on that compared to targets. I would try to go to take a nap and then all this war stuff would go on and you're
Yeah.
just like, okay, there's something there. Um, and personally, I don't have any techniques to disconnect myself out of that. I just don't think about it as much because
Yeah.
I think if you think about something, you kind of displace a portion of your awareness there. That's my personal belief. Like
Hmm.
even if you go back in time, and I suspect that part of PTSD is you being stuck back in time and you're
Mm.
replaying the stuff over and over in your head. And so I try to avoid that, even if it's like just a thing that I believe, but it seems to work for me. Just not,
That makes
or
a lot
maybe
of
it's just a
sense.
yeah. Okay, sorry.
No, that makes a lot of sense because they for some of these, when you have a flashback, it's full experiential sometimes. You're there, you're reliving the moment. And now thinking, and I think that also comes down to, the schools of thought with remote viewing. Are you actually going to the event or are you looking at a record of it? And the jury's out for me on that one. I don't know. But that makes a lot of sense if you're actually shifting your awareness back to that moment instead of just remembering something.
Yeah, yeah. If you like model the target in your mind, I think it does bring you back a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think when you go into ERV, you're more likely to slip into having like some sort of bilocation at the target because
Right.
you've inundated your subconscious with that stuff.
Right.
Um,
And you're right there.
yeah. So,
Hmm.
I like to think about it like if I think about something in my life over and over again, and I try to go to bed, I might slip into a dream about just that, just the
Hmm.
stuff I was thinking about, because my subconscious is there.
See, I'm not able to do that, not in the traditional sense. And I think, being neurodivergent, my brain is just always going. So I will hyper focus, I will ruminate on things. But when I go to bed, like I'll ruminate on something and try to think about it and program it into my dream. And it just doesn't, I just end up off with the clowns. I don't know. My mind doesn't work that way, but it sounds like yours, and I'm sure there's a lot of people with similar experiences whose brains work the way yours do, that have that ability to do that. I'm envious for sure, because I can't ever quiet this noise. It just never seems to stop.
Yeah, I don't know if you can ever do so. Like, I feel part of it is just directing it, to do
Hmm.
something else rather than
Right.
quieting it. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's true. That's where like yoga helps me, like just focusing on my breathing and my positioning. And that's what really trained me how to meditate was learning yoga because it gave me something to focus on as opposed to like, oh, just clear your mind of all thoughts, which that just doesn't ever work.
Yeah,
I don't know,
I don't know if you've ever been hit, if you ever hit that point of clearing your own mind.
No, I
Yeah.
think that's the misconception about meditation is empty your mind, but I don't think that's really how anybody does it. for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Brian, it's been an awesome conversation, man. You've given me a lot to think about. Especially with some of these loop things. I'll be pondering those. I'll be thinking about that before I go to sleep tonight. Any final thoughts? Oh, we need to talk about Enigma Con before we wrap this up. That's an
Oh yeah.
important conversation to have. You're one of the minds behind Enigma Con. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it? It's a huge event coming up. What is it? The early November, first weekend in November?
Yeah, November 1st and 2nd are the days, 10 p.m. Eastern. Um, and Enigma is a group that's been operating since early 2022.
Hmm.
I was part of the first class of CETA, and after that, we were granted the opportunity to kind of develop a little bit under HRVG method.
Hmm.
And so, once you learn something, you have to put it into action. And so that's
Right.
what we did. And we've just been in our own group, kind of secretive and haven't really done anything out in the public. Uh, and so after a while, you need to come out and say something. There has to be some sort of way to evolve out of our group.
Right.
Um, and so this is kind of what this is about. Granted, there's a lot of people that you'll probably recognize, Dick, uh, Edward,
Hmm.
um, Sita, a lot of these people, Naeem.
Yeah, Naeem's there.
Yeah, but there's some people there that you probably never heard about, or are familiar with. One of which is Mark Ireland, which is Richard Ireland's son. And
Hmm.
Richard is the basis for the HRVG method, just like Ingo Swann was a basis for the CRV method
Hmm.
in the military. And so we're intending to kind of develop remote viewing, and out of that development, we're going to talk about some stuff that going to make you think a little bit about
Right.
where we live, the environment in which we exist, the remote viewing environment. Um, and so that's our goal, is to make people think. And with that, it's just 45 bucks. You can just find that at enigmarv.com or ffgrv.com/enigmacon. The reason it's so low is because we want to reach people. We don't want to, we're not here
Right.
for money. Um, and so you're going to get a lot of benefit out of this. And if you want to win a free HRVG course, we're doing that for 5 people out of this contest.
Oh wow.
Um,
So EnigmaCon, just to backpedal a minute. So it's an event that you're putting on. It's 2 days where you're going to have speakers with presentations about remote viewing, right?
yeah,
Information, experiences, projects, things never before seen, talking about remote viewing, the experience of it, the process of it, the data that comes through. You have a ton of speakers lined up for this, a ton of presenters lined up for this, and there's also an opportunity for people that register to earn a seat of one of 5 seats in an HRVG training course. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Well, thanks for putting that together. I was kind of all over the place on that one.
It's all good, man. The
Yeah, yeah,
elements were there. The elements were
yeah.
there. And
But
the
yeah,
website where people can go to one more time, it's well, ffgrv.com/ is it Enigma or Enigma Con?
Enigma Con. If you go to the
Enigma
home
Con.
page, there's a landing link on the top of that page.
And I'll have it linked like here somewhere on this podcast if you're watching on YouTube, so you can access it as well. And the links will be below. So okay, that's going to be a lot of fun, and it's coming up. That's November 1st and 2nd, right? That's
First and
Saturday and
second,
Sunday.
yeah. Starts
Right.
at 10 a.m. Eastern,
Yeah,
and
it's
we'll
gonna.
run till around
Yeah,
8, 9 o'clock.
yeah, it's gonna be great. I'll be moderating a roundtable discussion that Sunday evening with some top names in remote viewing, talking a lot about the process of remote viewing and as I like to do, seeing where the conversation leads us. So definitely check it out, EnigmaCon. And like I said, the links will be wherever. They're somewhere here and down below. Brian, any final thoughts on anything else that we've talked about?
Uh, I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
I tend to jump around a lot, and I'm sorry for that, but you managed it pretty well. So I trust that the
Yeah.
conversation in EnigmaCon will be damn good as well. So We'll
Yeah,
see.
no,
Yeah.
it was a great discussion, Brian. Like I said, you said a lot of things that resonated with me. You and I think, have a lot in common in terms of some, similar routes in our journeys. So that's always cool to connect with someone else who can relate to these weird things that we go through. And you brought me some insights and some thoughts that I've never pieced together before. So there's a lot of value there. So I appreciate it. So thank you for being a guest on the show. So on behalf of Brian and the rest of the Future Forecasting Group, I'm Dennis Nappy II. Thanks for watching.